There are worse jobs. I had one time that lasted a day. You'll never guess what it was. You get 2 guesses.
Oh boy. Things that I could not see you doing. Being a waitress.
No, I was a waiter.
You're a waiter.
I was a
Wasn't
waiter.
your worst job?
No, it wasn't my worst job. I was actually quite good at it. I had like a whole bag of jokes and magic tricks.
Okay. Other one would be... Well, I know you lasted longer than 1 day as a delivery driver.
Yes, that too. Yeah, I did.
Was that up there as one of the worst jobs you ever had?
No, it wasn't. Actually, you know what? That one was so different that I actually made a game out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have these weird like things that I do with jobs.
Sure.
In order to enjoy them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's some jobs are just like the absolute worst.
Okay, so your worst job was?
I'm not going to tell you.
Well, you said I had 2 guesses.
I guess if you would have got it right, I would have had to. Okay, fine, I'll tell you. I was going to try and push it off to another episode. But
oh, okay. Well, let's push it off to another episode.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my worst job.
What's that?
Well, when I saw this, I thought, I mean, I've had, like, I don't know if there's like a worst, because you and I are kind of optimists where, like, I try to take a lesson in everything, right? So some of the jobs that I've had, okay, that wasn't ideal, but I mean, I learned something in everything. There were 2 of them, actually. So I'll make up for the job, but you're not going to tell me what it was.
Okay.
So I'll give 2. I was in my early 20s, twice a call center agent, but one for this, like inbound. So you take calls instead of make calls. I could never do the telemarketing thing, but the inbound calls. So they're calling you for a service or whatever. So there was this, like a tool that just came out of the market. I know nothing about tools. So they play this infomercial, and then you're the one taking the calls, and you have to take their information, right? And based on the pricing and everything, like, it's just a total scam. So then, yeah, these old guys calling, oh, wow, I can't wait to use this tool. Like, it's going to be so good. I'm like, yes, sir, it's an extra $19.95 on top of your $9.95 for shipping and handling. Oh, okay. And like, shipping and handling came in an envelope. So, I mean, I worked there for like 2 months. It was atrocious. I hated it, but I needed a job in between another job. So, yeah, that goes down as one of my worst jobs ever. And the other one was working for an organization in a city that I'm not going to name the city or who it was, but I was doing an after-school program in a center that was not a rec center, but they had a rec area in the center. It was a library, and they had a lot of extracurricular activity for students that were of the at-risk environment that would come through and vandalize the library. So their idea was, let's create an after-school program. I had to wear these big orange uniforms that looked like ridiculous. And you had these tiny, strict parameters of the things that you could do. Your board games you could play. And like, these kids are not into board games. They're into violence. They're into, doing things that require a lot of physical activity. That's not like it was. And I didn't last long in that job either. It was a frustrating one.
Wow, so. Your bad jobs are way cooler than my bad job. I was just going to say, like, hawking stuff at the hockey game.
Oh.
Like, I did that for about, like, 2 days, and then I got a different position.
Well, it's not a bad job at all. It'd be kind of cool doing...
No, but you had your
like
back...
whipping T-shirts into the crowd.
No, you had your back to the hockey game the entire time, and you're holding up, like, bags of cotton candy.
Oh.
And like, yeah, you're selling licorice while everyone's trying to get out of the way. I'm trying to see the game. Like, it was brutal, but that, wow.
You get to be at the game.
Your adventures are way cooler than mine. Boy, I like to give us a little bit of a tangent to start, but yeah.
Well, everybody's got to make sacrifices.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, everyone's got to make sacrifices. Yeah. Episode number 14 is about sacrifice. The theme is doing what's best, not necessarily what we want. So out of my 2 jobs that I talked about, was I doing what was best? Well, probably not for long. Yeah.
It is easier to do your best at something though when you enjoy doing something. When you do something. Okay, I'll go back to the waiter thing.
Okay.
I was a waiter at a restaurant, and I'd say it's not really like, it's not super high end. Like, I didn't have to wear a suit to be a waiter.
Right.
At the same time, I was only like, I was one of 2 male waiters at this restaurant. And so every time there was
So you had to wear the skimpy shorts and tight shirt.
No. No.
So it's not the restaurant I was thinking of.
No. Sorry. Hooters are all closed. It was.
I was picturing you with a big beard. Where's the bearded lady at?
What type of restaurants are you going to? This is like fine dining. This is like a steak place. You go to steak places?
You said one of two male waiters. It's like, that's the first place my mind went.
That's it. Taking my ball and going home.
We're starting from scratch. Episode 13 already went off the rails enough, so.
Okay, so anyway, fine dining.
Yeah.
In proper attire.
Sure.
I had this thing down to an art. Okay, so being two male waiters, you'd have little old ladies that would come in for a dinner, dessert in the afternoon. Okay, you have your main lunch, you have dinner, and then in the afternoon, you have coffee and cake.
Sure.
Okay, so how do you make money off of coffee and cake? And you're like one of the only people that are on this shift.
Sure.
So I figured this out. Coffee was cheap. Okay, and my manager was often like, "Listen, if you gotta like give someone a second cup of coffee or a third cup of coffee, just give it to them." Okay, and like even
back in the day, they didn't do coffee refills.
No, they did coffee refills, but like I mean, like for free. Like if someone's had a dinner and they're spending $40 on a steak, you're not going to charge them $3 for a coffee.
I didn't know you actually had to pay for coffee refills back in the day.
Just let them have a coffee
because they give coffee refills now. For free.
Well, you didn't have. I'm not saying a refill. I'm saying an initial coffee. Like after dinner, some people like to have coffee. Yeah. So have your coffee. You say just give them the coffee. So a couple of ladies would come in. They'd order cake. They'd have cake. Or maybe they had a light lunch.
Sure.
And they'd have dessert. And so I figured out I could get drinks at like any time I wanted for like $1. And then I get half price anything on the menu. So I would use my discount to get half price dessert. So I'd often like two old ladies having lunch. Can I treat you to dessert? I see you really enjoy your conversation. Are you two friends? Oh yeah, no, we just meeting up. We haven't seen each other in years. That's great. Would you guys like a dessert? Great. Buy a dessert. It cost me like $2.
Sure.
Then all of a sudden I figured out the whole change aspect of things because it was back in the day when people used to pay more with cash than with cards.
Right.
And you'd say, well, listen, someone had a bill now. They had lunch, about $12-15 each. Then they had dessert, and I would work out dessert to be just a couple dollars over whatever the largest denomination was for bills.
Sure.
That way, and instead of breaking large bills, they could give a more generous tip. And so I'd always like play games like that in my own head, figure out the math ahead of time and say like, okay, this bill's going to come to $19.95, but if I give them a $3 dessert, now they're not going to only give me a $2 tip.
Right.
Instead, they're automatically going to give me a $5 or a $10 and work their way up out of it.
Sure.
So I would often try to play games with jobs in order to make it more enjoyable.
Until you find that one person that's like, give me my change, please. You're like, okay,
give me my 20 cents.
Yeah. There are those people out there.
So sometimes it was just a matter of like, even though it maybe was not the most enjoyable moment of it, it was trying to find a way to enjoy it and have fun with it.
Sure. Yeah, and sometimes, when we're talking about work, and we live in a time where finances are tough, right? More than ever, the cost of things are way up there in everything, in food, in rent, vehicles, utilities, you name it. Costs are astronomical. Maybe you're forced to do something that you don't enjoy.
Yep.
You just have to do it because got to pay the bills, right? You hear a lot of stories, and again, I'm not married. This is why I love hosting with you. Because we're great friends, but we live in two totally different opposite ends of the world.
Absolutely.
Right? Married man, a lot of kids, business owner, single guy, have time to do things that I want to do, but have my own obstacles as well, right? So we both have our own realities, and we look at life through a different lens, but we can both agree on this. Sometimes when finances are tough, you just have to go and find a way to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely you do. And it's not always circumstantial. It's need.
Yeah.
Okay. And want is different than need.
Sure.
And life stage is important. I like how you laid that out. because we don't even know the life stage of our listeners.
No.
And sometimes it's like, okay, what's the life stage that you're in? I'm in life stage of just getting by.
Yeah.
What life stage are you in? Well, even though you might be a whole different age or the same age of that same person that's going through that, I have abundance.
Yeah.
I got lots.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, though, how abundance does not always bring joy.
Sure.
And how lots of times looking back to those times of struggle or like just having to do to get by to the need point, not even accomplishing any of the wants, you look back and like, whoa, can't believe we got through that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's relay this to the athlete that maybe, let's start with time. Maybe at one point in time, you had an abundance of time and you could be able to do other things that you enjoy doing. You could spend more time in the gym, spend more time coaching, spend more time doing other things. And now you're looking at your life going, I don't have a lot of time anymore. And, maybe my skill set isn't where it used to be. I had maybe an MCL replacement or, something like that. And my goals against average has gone up from what it used to be.
Yep.
Or I'm not scoring as many goals. Well, how do I find the way to get back to where I was? Sometimes you have to do what's best, not necessarily what we want in order to get those results.
Well, and sometimes you have to not even just put in the effort. You got to put yourself in difficult positions.
Mm-hmm.
Some people use the recovery from an injury. Okay, I severed my ACL playing soccer. Do I look like a soccer player? I'm not a soccer player. Don't answer that.
I can give you an example right now that happened an hour and a half ago that tells me this is not a soccer player.
No, but you know what? Not a soccer player. And when I severed my ACL, the first thing my father said to me, you should have kept your skates on. And I was just like, what? He's like, yeah, no. You didn't injure yourself like that playing hockey.
Right.
It was usually your job to try and injure someone in the role you had in hockey.
Sure.
So it was like, okay, well, that's a little bit of perspective. I kind of went out of my comfort zone to try a different sport to do something. And in doing that, I injured myself now to impact my hockey. After I did that, I didn't play men's league I didn't even coach for a couple years after that.
Yeah.
And it was like, looking back on it, I'm like, it took a lot for me mentally to even get back into it, to start pivoting and doing things on the ice that I was back comfortable again because of the recovery, even mentally from it, let alone physically. It was a big strain on a lot of things. And it's difficult too when we have to sacrifice. Sometimes it's not by our own doing.
Well, I want to use another hockey analogy. Let's say maybe, you're 17, 18 years old listening to this, and maybe you're used to playing, or you're used to playing at the pro level, right? You're used to putting in results. Maybe you're a player playing major, junior, put up pretty good numbers, for the first couple of years. You're 19. Now you're 20 years old, right? You're 20 years old, your final year of eligibility. Major, junior teams aren't looking at you anymore. You're like, do I want to play junior A in the last year of my career? Where in looking at myself in the mirror going, I just spent 3 years playing major, junior. Why would I want to finish out my career playing junior A? Right? Is that something that I'm relegated, air quotes, to do, maybe in your eyes, and it's a difficulty? Add that application into any other sport, in any other situation. You're used to playing a high level. Now you're forced to go into a spot that isn't what you're traditionally used to. But it might be best for you in that moment compared to what you feel, it might be.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not necessarily what you can't do anymore. It's now what you have to do. And so it's the two things are synonymous with each other.
Sure.
And it kind of takes me to, it made me look at our verse for today.
Right.
Matthew 16:24. Matthew 16:24 says, Then Jesus said to his disciples, Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Yeah, we're getting into that, and I'm Dan, and you're Dave. And
yes, hello. Welcome to the Gospel in the Game. Episode number 13, we spent so much time talking about baseball. I think it sidetracked us.
We sacrificed the intro to get to our point.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was jobs. We were talking about jobs.
Sure.
Yeah. You only wish your job was baseball.
Well, and the vision of you waitering and never mind.
That's
Just,
right, exactly.
That threw everything off course.
The vision of me playing
yeah,
soccer.
I'm trying to block that out of my brain, which then also blocked everything else from the show out of my brain. So trying to go back and access it, it's like, no, it's too painful.
That's right. That's right. So if we want to follow Christ, it requires something, and it's denying self. Now,
what does
people go ahead? You're going to ask the question that I'm about to answer. So go ahead.
What does denying yourself look like? What does sacrifice look like in your life?
Yeah, and some people see it as giving up everything, but at the same time, I think it's a little more focused than that. Sometimes it's realizing what you have to do. It's not necessarily just a matter of giving up. It's realizing actually what your commitment is. And it's a focus. So let's take it back to the athlete. If I am a sprinter and my focus is to run as fast as I possibly can in a straight line, am I going to be committed to making sure that I'm an excellent skater? Like there's things that you would not do sport-wise.
Sure.
Because it's a different stride, it's a different style, it's a lot of things, even though it may be a great sport and training and a lot of other things, you wouldn't do that. And so, but sometimes it's also those things that you want to do. You're not going to have Pop-Tarts every morning.
Sure.
That's an important discipline as well. So there's certain commitments that come as a cost. If you want to improve in something, it requires commitment.
Yeah. And when I think of sacrifice in my life, it's end of August, I was feeling kind of lethargic and just blah overall. I went on a trip to Dallas, came back and looked at my life and went, well, this happened before I went to Dallas, that I just wasn't feeling healthy. And I thought, at my age, with my family history, I'm not going down a good path. Most of my life, I've lived pretty liberally in the sense that my diet didn't matter. I could just eat whatever I wanted to because I was always pretty thin growing up and didn't really have, based on my metabolism, I slowed. Like I could eat a lot for a long period of time up until my mid-20s without gaining any weight. And it would irritate me. And then finally into my 30s, like, oh, okay, actually I'm at the weight that I want to be. And then, mentally in my mind, I'm still stuck in my teenage years where I'm not putting on any weight, so then I continually eating at the same pace, where now I'm starting to, my body's like reacting differently. I don't have the abilities that I used to have, in my teens anymore, but I'm still stuck in the old mindset that I was stuck with in my teenage years of going, oh, well, it doesn't matter what you eat, you're not going to gain any weight and all the other things that go along with that. I won't get into that in today's show, but that all caught up to me in the summertime where I'm going, hold on, like, now I'm starting to feel in my body things that I shouldn't feel that are getting me into a difficult situation where at my age, these are risky scenarios to be in. So I walked in and my whole life, I've never gone to the gym. Always been afraid of it. Never. Always been afraid of it. I thought you go to the gym as a place where there's judgment and people are laughing at you. Number one. Number two, I don't never know what I'm doing. I walk out into a gym, I pick up a dumbbell and that's it. Okay. This is fun. What else do I do? So I would never go because I didn't know what I was doing. And I also thought it wasn't a place that I would enjoy. So I had a friend that took me, once or twice last year with him as a buddy pass. And I'm like, oh, this certain location's actually kind of cool. It's convenient. I like it. It's not bad. So I walked in end of August and said, hi, I want to buy 1-year membership. They're like, we don't sell 1-year memberships. I'm like, I want to buy 1-year membership. We don't sell 1-year memberships. Like, I'm committing to this. Just let me talk to somebody.
Let me do what I want to do.
Yeah. So I sat down with this guy, he talked me through this and this. Okay. Well, hear this. Do you want to try personal training? I said, sure, I could use it because if I don't have somebody to show me what I'm doing to keep me in line, I'm not going to go.
Yeah.
So committing to that for a few months now, looking at it going, okay, what are the things I have to sacrifice? I can't be staying up late watching, TV shows. That would just be my way to relax. You get down another episode of Netflix. Sometimes it's into the early hours of the morning, then whatever. That's gone. I'm not going to eat super salty or sugary foods anymore. That's gone. Gave up pop. That's gone. There are other little habits in my life that I've been abandoning with the trade-off of going, okay, well, I want these results and I'm starting to feel My first day on the treadmill, I couldn't put it on 3 incline and 3 speed for longer than 10 minutes without being exhausted. And now there's tremendous progress because sacrificing something that was important and a mindset that I stuck in for a number of years, that I ultimately realized at a pinnacle age going, if I keep going on this mindset, if I stay the course, if this is the continual perpetual path that I'm going on, this is going to lead to disaster. So what the sacrifice is throwing that away and taking now this new path.
So now let's take that wonderful example, personal example, and take it and look at the other half of the verse. Because if you are sacrificing and you're being disciplined, taking up your cross and following, how does one do that in sport?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I want to think in examples in a room. You might be, I think there's, in sports culture, those who are around sport and the intricacies of sport. If you're listening to this and someone who's on the outside just thinks sports is playing and the rigors of going to the rink and whatever, when you're involved in the culture of sport, there's temptation. There's sometimes things happen within the room in little factions of the group that are outside of the locker room, the dressing room, that can make things difficult when it comes to how you live your life. So there might be decisions in factions. We talked in episode 13 about how, when you start to change, the situation around you starts to change. Let's say you've recently just given your life to Jesus and you're in a group that is now doing behaviors that you used to love to do, but you now don't want to do those things anymore. So giving those things up, sacrificing those things, and giving you the opportunity to live a better life. Or it might mean, okay, well, your goals against average is 390 right now. You want to get it down to 210. What are some things you need to do? Okay, well, if you're hanging out with friends 3 nights a week in the evenings, maybe you need to cut that completely out for 3 months and focus more specifically on these things. Getting up early, reading the Bible. Maybe that might be a difference for you as well. If you're just getting up in the morning on your phone for 10 minutes, you have breakfast, you have a shower, you go to work, you go to school, maybe instead now you get up a half hour earlier and you're reading the Bible.
Yeah, so you're really equipping yourself. You're equipping yourself to be able to stay disciplined.
Right.
One of the guys that I really like following is the chaplain for the Baltimore Ravens NFL football team. Excellent chapel program, a lot of good information, and a lot of his stuff that he talks about.
You yourself are a chaplain, if you listen to this and you're new.
100%. And I say that too often, by the way, 100%. But
we all have our crutch words.
We all have our crutch words, absolutely. But one of the things I wanted to point out was a lot of times he gives a specific verse that guys use to equip them, not just for the game, but also for life outside of the game. And one of the things that he posted the other day was just a simple verse. And I thought when we were talking about this, when you were just sharing and talking about being disciplined and equipping yourself and having these things in order to keep on going and persevering, because we know perseverance develops character and character hope. And there's all these great things that come from being disciplined and carrying up your cross and following Christ, no matter what the cost of it is. In Isaiah 54, verse 17, it says, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." Very simple. And just as a quick word of encouragement, he'll just pop stuff up. That's what we're talking about. And it's a good reminder for me that it's just like, sometimes it's just the simple things. It's the simple reminders to be disciplined. It's the simple reminders that's like, there's going to be things that are against you. Even if there's going to be things that are going to try and get you undisciplined and to tear you down and to kind of chop you at the knees. But you know what? You just got to get back up, even if you do get chopped down, and keep on going with it.
And I think a lot of athletes listening to this can resonate with the concept of goals and discipline. And, I have a goal that I want to do this. And I think a lot of athletes can gravitate to that concept, right? And okay, well, I'm going this way. I know the things I need to do. I know my diet. I know I need to be working out. I know elite, especially high-level athletes, right? I think the further down the chain you get, there's some distraction to different levels, and it's not much of a commitment to a lifestyle.
Yep.
We're professional athletes. I have a goal. I know I can't eat these things. I know I got to be at the gym. I know I got to do. So, I mean, it's broad. We're speaking to overall in sport, but, you know, I think the concept of sacrifice, doing what's best, not necessarily what you want. Sometimes that might mean, hey, you were on the top line last season. You scored 20 being on this guy's wing. This year, you're going to be fourth line. Or instead of power play,
You have a different role.
you're killing a penalty this
Yeah.
year instead.
Yeah.
And you're not only you're on the second penalty kill unit, because I want these guys out there. You instead are going to be the checker. When it's a late in the game, tied 2-2, you're not out there to win the faceoff anymore. You're now this guy. I want you on the bench. I want you controlling the atmosphere of the bench, keeping guys elevated.
Yeah.
Right? Which is still an important role.
But you know what, though? It is hard to take that. Young or old.
Yeah.
I coach hockey.
Yeah.
Okay, U15, AA hockey. I told a young guy the other week, I said, you're not playing center. You're on winger this week. And it was hard for him. It was difficult just to even go out of a position. It was. But I had to do it because part of the strategy for it was he was going to be part of our power play the week after.
Right.
And on that power play, he has to play wing.
Sure.
Because of the hand he is, because of the skill set he has.
Right.
And in order for him to put him in that position, I had to, for one game, put him on the wing to get him out of this center mindset.
Right.
And he went through the frustrations of it. And that following game, when he was on the power play, his line scored. They got the goal.
Yeah.
And it was an important goal in that game.
Right.
And it was interesting because just the other day, there was a posted on social media. There was a college team. I think it was Denver. It was Denver, NCAA hockey. Did a very similar power play formation. And the guy who was playing wing made the same perfect pass to the guy in front. And the guy scored. And I just showed it to him and said, hey, look, even these guys are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like this light bulb moment for both me as coach and for him as player.
Yeah.
That it was like, listen, there's a method behind this.
Right.
And I think often too, when we're called to be disciplined, when we're called to deny ourselves, when we're called to take up, God has a purpose behind all of this.
And the purpose often can be example. I want you to be an example.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Jesus was. That's ultimately what the goal is. We want to be examples to others, right? Our lives are not our lives. It's to live in according to his purpose, to be an example to other people, right? So I want you to live better. Yes, for you to have a great life, but the way you're going to have a great life is by serving others, right? So you're on a team. You start to adopt that mindset. You were a number one guy. Now you're on the fourth line. You know, I can think of a lot of NHLers in this mindset. I'm not going to mention the name that comes to my mind because there's a lot of controversial opinions based on this guy's name, but it was on the Oilers last year, got to, with them and whatever, back with them this year again. But there's a lot of players in the league who have done this. They've gone from top line to bottom line. So then another guy comes on the team, right, who you have just adopted this mindset. You're loving it. You're working through it. You're seeing how it's changing you, and they're not giving their 100%. And you're looking at them going, okay, well, I can now look at it differently because I'm living in that life.
Yeah. It gives you a different lens to look through. And also it allows you not only to be an example, say, listen, I can be an example, maybe to motivate and encourage this guy, but also at the same time, maybe this is the thing that allows me to have a deeper conversation with him or to point somewhere else. And it's not always through success, but it's often through struggles that we have an opportunity to show our own character, but more or less display Christ-likeness to those who are watching.
Here's what the ultimate problem overall with humanity, it's always been the same and it'll always be the same. We are selfish people. We want everybody to look at life through our lens.
Right.
We want everybody to hear our problems, to hear our successes. It's all about us. That is the number one thing, because that's what made Lucifer fall from heaven. That's what the enemy's goal is to make us selfish people. Selfish is the opposite of love.
Well, and so often in sport, when you see someone, I guess you'd say, fall from a platform, that's usually the case.
It usually is. So then how do you mitigate that? through love and humility. So Jesus wants us to be examples of him through love and humility. So we talk about taking up your cross and following him. Sometimes that means sacrificing. And yes, you might deserve a position. And there might be examples out there that are, you should deserve it and get it. And that's not what we're talking about. But we're talking about maybe you're still qualified, but it's not the right timing anymore.
Yeah.
So this is now a sacrifice of going, you know what? This isn't my time anymore. Now my job is to elevate others. So like you said, in those moments, this might be a gateway for you to have this great conversation, a life-changing conversation, because it's not about you and the story.
Yeah.
You're not the focal point of the story. It's Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? Putting Jesus in your spot and going, how do I put that first? And that's a big sacrifice. And then realizing what eventually comes from that as a reward.
We're going to wrap up with a quick story. Young athlete. Team's playing an important tournament. Guy stands on his head playing in net. His teammate, who won player of the game, wins player of the game again, or someone else had won it. The guy goes and gives it to the guy that stood on his head. And he says, out of frustration, he's like, no, I don't want this. We didn't win the game. We didn't do this together. I don't want it. And he took the player of the game trophy out of a little bit of frustration and tossed it in the garbage can. And the point that he made afterwards, he got in a little trouble from his coach for doing that, but he explained to his coach, it wasn't about me. Me winning wasn't the important thing.
Right.
I did that so that every single one of the players in the room could win. And because we were self-focused, or some individuals were, we ended up losing.
Right.
But the point afterwards, and it wasn't until later on in the year that kind of everyone got that, but that was like one of the defining moments in this team, was when all of a sudden it was like, no, listen, this is a team thing. If we're going to be successful, it's got to be about us, not me.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of the heart attitude about sacrifice, is when we start seeing everything that it's like, it's not about me. It's about everything that I can do for all of us.
Yeah. That's a great example. I just to add to what you're saying, I think that it's funny. People in a team can understand, yes, well, I'll block shots for the team for sure. I'll kill penalties for the team for sure. Maybe you can understand that. But what if it means I have to scratch you tonight because this guy is just better suited for this matchup? Are you okay with that?
Wow.
Right? So, looking at the concept of how selfish are we really, and then what can we sacrifice for the message of elevating other people, which ultimately will bring glory to the cross, right?
Yeah.
So,
and doing it in a way where the act of taking the trophy and putting it in the garbage doesn't seem as selfish as in itself.
Right.
That's the art behind it.
Sure.
Right. And I think that's where humility comes in. If you haven't listened to that episode, that's a good episode.
Yeah, it's also a good episode. No, the two really go hand in hand. I think that sacrifice is something that, we all have to encounter. Be it if you're playing sport, if you're listening to this, you have things in your life that aren't necessarily, you have hard decisions you have to make. Sometimes you got to do things, as we talked about earlier in the show, work a job that you may not like to make ends meet, or, change a career and do something for a short period of time. But sacrifice is an important component to that. I'm Dan. No, I'm not Dan.
We already discussed. You stopped taking my ID.
That's true.
Like, my goodness.
I want to take your ideas for if I ever become a waiter. Maybe I have to be a waiter one day. Maybe that's a sacrifice.
Well, I know. You supposedly know a good restaurant that you could work at. I'm Dan. That's Dave.
Follow us on social media, Instagram and Twitter, and download our podcast where all episodes of podcasts can be found.